thing with you next to me. I know that I've been the enemy, but I've had my moment of gravity, Lost in the ceiling, caught up in the ceiling, I can't seem to let it go. Locked in this cage, I've been stuck here for days and I can't seem to let you go. You pull me up and I put you down. You gave me love, then I stole your crown. You let me in, then I pushed you out. Come let me make up for all these pain. I've been a mess, tied by all these chains. Open my eyes, now I finally see. Struck the key, yeah. Can we be free? You pull me up, yeah. Can we be free? And I put you down. You pull me up and I put you down. You gave me love, then I stole your crown. You let me in, then I pushed you out. Don't let me make up for all these pain. I've been a mess, tied by all these chains. Open my eyes, now I finally see. Struck the key, yeah. You pull me up and I put you down. You gave me love, then I stole your crown. You let me in, then I pushed you out. Don't let me make up for all these pain. I've been a mess, tied by all these chains. Open my eyes, now I finally see. Struck the key, yeah. Can we be free? You pull me up, yeah. Can we be free? And I put you down.
I think it was a Honda, a 99 that we drive in plain Nirvana. It never started right away, it didn't wanna let me get too far from here. I was still too young to realize that these summertime drives, they don't last your whole lifetime. I think it was a Honda, I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I'm running out of karma, I don't think that I'll make it any longer. But with you by my side, I feel stronger than I've ever been before. Still too young to realize that these summertime drives, they don't last your whole lifetime. I think it was a Honda, I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I'm running out of karma, I don't think that I'll make it any longer. But with you by my side, I feel stronger than I've ever been before. I'm running out of karma,
real clockwork soldier.
Generation Orange in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Generation Orange. My name is Edson Ochoa, one of your co-hosts for this wonderful show that you guys love and appreciate a lot. It's Sean Free Edition this week, but we do have a lot of special guests tonight. As we have been promoting the past couple of days, we are going to have a serious discussion alongside some Houston area journalists that cover the Houston Dynamo, just to talk not only about what's going on with this team, also, their inputs on this team, outside of the neutrality of covering this team, and also discuss the latest breaking news coming out of the Dynamo, and that is the sacking of Wilmer Cabrera. But first of all, let's go ahead and introduce to the person who you can see right now on the screen. His name is Jesus Acevedo Jr., and he writes and covers for the Houston Dynamo for his website, The Bayou Citizen. Jesus, how are you doing, man?
Doing well. Lots to talk about, but doing well. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for hosting this here roundtable. I'm sure it's something that Houston Dynamo fans have been wanting for quite a while, especially given how the team has been performing lately.
No, definitely, man. I think it's something that has been overdue, and something that needs to be talked about in the local media. That I feel like, as much as we try, you guys more than anything do it through the written way. It kind of goes like how they say, like the water goes under the bridge and nothing really gets discussed. And I think, having the people listen to us talk about it, as well as engage in the chat on YouTube, I think we can get a good back and forth on what the Dynamo fans believe, should happen from here on in the future. But let me go ahead and introduce the next person that is coming on today for this roundtable, and that is Derrick. Please forgive me if I mispronounce it. Derrick Stowers from Dynamo Theory. Derrick, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing great, man. I think, like Jesus was saying, we've got a lot to talk about. I mean, this whole season has kind of been up and then down and then a little bit more down, and it's going to be interesting to see how things play out the rest of the season.
No, I agree, but I think, to me, it's one of those things where this season, it was like, how low can you go kind of thing, and I feel like this past couple of weeks and how the Dynamo have been performing, not only score wise, but also how they looked like on the pitch. Their performance on the pitch has been subpar, where there was no hiding that something needed to be changed. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that we've talked about it before, because we've seen the Dynamo playing at very high levels for periods of time, and then completely regress, and it's cost them a lot of points. I mean, I think you and I one time I forget which game it was, but we were joking because they played really well the first half, and we've kind of said, well, do you think what's going to happen because of what happened last week? Are they going to?
It was against Minnesota in the Open Cup.
Yes, and yeah, that was exactly what happened. So it's a shame, because it's one thing that I've been saying, and I think a lot of other people have been saying, is that the team as assembled currently, I think they're not playing up to the level that we think that they're capable of.
Nope, I definitely agree. Jesus, anything else you want to add?
I do wonder if now, if things would have played out different had the Dynamo won these last two road games, which if we all saw the games, we can see the 3 points, 6 points were there for the taking. Both games, the win was there for the taking. So I wonder how that would have played into what kind of factors that would have gave in. The other thing is, I think is what do you do now by firing Cabrera with 9 games left? They're essentially, I mean, mathematically, yes, they're still able to make the playoffs, but if we're being honest, the nails in the coffins have been put already. So, I guess maybe this is to see what Davey Arnett can do in these 9 games. Maybe they sign him as a full coach, because, I mean, we know this team does not, if this franchise, this club doesn't want to spend money on players, they're definitely not going to spend it on a good, high quality coach. So, so there's that a factor as well. So maybe they're taking these 9 games saying, okay, Davey, what can you do in these 9 games? Should we keep you on as a full head coach and remove the interim tag?
Yeah, that I think that's great, and I know I mentioned it in previous shows before when I was discussing this with Sean. Which greetings to him if he's watching right now. But one of the things that we kind of mentioned was that if this organization doesn't shell out a lot of money overall for at least for the DP level. At the DP level, they're not going to shell out a lot of money. What makes us think they're going to shell out a lot of money to bring in a good coach for this team? And also, even if they do, would those coaches be willing to come to Houston with all of these factors that that come into play in the Houston market? The lack of support from the city, attendance wise, lack of media coverage, et cetera, et cetera. But that's also one of the topics that we'll go ahead and talk about today. But the first topic I do want to talk about, is, well, we know that Cabrera's been fired. Cabrera's been sacked already. But my question to you guys, and I would like to discuss, was one of the factors for his sacking the fact that he lost control of the locker room, or what factors do y'all think contributed to the sacking?
I'd say it's probably all of the things. It's the what is it? They've got 7 points from their last 14 games, something like that. So definitely results has to be in the conversation, and probably losing the locker room. And the team could have come to the ownership or front office could have come to the conclusion that is it worth? I don't know. Who are you going to back? Are you going to back the players who have signed contracts, or players that you could eventually move and you want them to improve their performance on the field so that price tag can go up? Or are you going to back the coach who's not getting it done? So I think it's a lot of those things all put together.
I think one of the key phrases that I do remember Matt Jordan saying when they signed Cabrera from RGV to be the full head coach for Dynamo was that Cabrera was a teacher of the game. And with that, I myself expected that there would be more young players put into the first team, or using RGB for that purpose, which I know we'll get into RGB later on in this show. But if you think about it, was he really a teacher of the game in these 3 years with the Dynamo? The only player that I can maybe say that he helped come along was Mauro Manotas. We talked a lot about how, well, not here, but on social media, fans have talked a lot about how Elise and Kyoto are hotheads. A coach who's a teacher of the game, he should have been able to get those players under control and channel that passion into a positivity. And here we are, Kyoto and Elise are still making dumb mistakes. That is just essentially what they are, So does this happen with the coach that has better control of the team? Maybe, but maybe Elise and Kyoto doing this in their third year under Cabrera, maybe Cabrera's words were just falling on deaf ears, and they're like, you know what, it is what it is. Maybe it could be also the situation where Elise is already on his way out, so he's just like, I'm just here showing off myself, But so it could be a number of things, But I go back and say is, and I don't think I say this, but I'm saying it now. Maybe he's just being used as a scapegoat right now. So at least the fans are like, okay, the franchise is doing something. But like I said, with 9 games left, what does this do? They should have, if they really wanted to make a change and tell the fans, hey, we still think this season is salvageable, they would have done this after the Gold Cup or a couple games after the Gold Cup, especially after they lost 3 home games in a row.
Derrick?
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. And you remember too when he was the Kubo whisperer, and it's interesting because we see all these offensive players that Cabrera has been kind of associated with. These Houston teams have been attacking-based teams, but a big problem lately has been their inability to score goals. And we've seen problems more on the defensive end. And I know that we're going to talk about it more, just how the front office has kind of supported this team this offseason, especially with bringing in a backup for Cabezas and Vera, our new signings, Bizama. So we have more depth than we should. And it goes back to something I was saying before. It just seems like we're playing below the sum of our parts. It's just not coming. And I think that Jesus, you bring up an interesting point just about, I guess, what do we do for now? I mean, you said 9 games left, and now we're going to have an interim coach, and then I don't know what exactly it is, but I think definitely maybe some change will bring some life into the team, and it'll be interesting to see if that interim tag stays or what happens. I mean, it's going to depend on what we see going forward.
And I'll say this, they did try and show off the defense in the offseason, as I see at the chat, Francisco brings up that, Kiki Struna is one of the highest paid defenders, on this team and also as defender in the league as a whole. And I think, after the news dropped that Wilmer Cabrera was being let go, many people were asking for Matt Jordan to also be let go. But I'll say, having covered this team professionally for the last 3-4 years, I think this is the first offseason where I can think that Matt Jordan did a good job. Kiki Struna has been a good player. Matias Vera has also been solid enough. Bizama, yes, we've only seen 1 game, but you already see what he can do. And I mean, picking up Christian Ramirez, and I'm blanking out on the other guy that they picked up, but
Nico Hanek or something.
Yes, Nico. Let's just call him Nico for sure. So I think those are solid additions. So I think Jordan probably bought himself a couple more years, but then it also goes back to maybe, the firing of Cabrera. I just think it came too late into the season. Like I say, I'll go back and say if they even draw these 2 games, I don't think the team pulls the trigger on firing Wilmer Cabrera. I think because of the 2 losses and also I'll go back to one point. After the Dynamo beat Toronto 3-1, Tommy McNamara said in the post-game press conference, Houston in a position that he likes to play in the creative midfield. I think that's also another thing that Cabrera, he will sometimes play players out of position. He'll have Tommy Mac playing on the wing when he's not a wing player. He plays in the midfield. Even Memo, he plays him on the wing when he's really, I think he's a better positionist in the midfield. And that's whenever he plays on the left wing, he's always cutting inside because he likes to play in the midfield, So there's that aspect also as well. And something that I guess doesn't get talked about enough is Cabrera's second year. Before his second year, ESPN does this anonymous survey of MLS players, and they ask players who's the least coach or the least favorite coach or the least liked coach in MLS. Wilmer Cabrera was number 1, and one of the quotes was said is, and I'm probably not saying this right, but one of the quotes was essentially to the point that Wilmer Cabrera has favorites and he holds grudges with players, and that's why some players won't leave the field. And that's that quote, and I'm sure maybe the people in the chat can find that.
And guess who recently liked a tweet that we tweeted out during the last week having to deal with that specific quote, Chris Duval.
Well, that could also be part of it too, but I think also is that I also think about Juan Mayor. He played nearly every game last season he has barely been able to get on the field. The Dynamo are relying on a 38-year-old center back, and while Maynard has been good, you know, like is he your future at center back? I mean, the Dynamo brought in Mayor to be part of their future of the back line, and he has barely been able to get on the field in MLS regular season games. I haven't looked at how many minutes he's played last season compared to this minutes, but I bet you it's a huge difference.
Yeah, I can take it.
That's a great point, especially about Boyan Mayor, because we said early on that Maynor, it was good for him to start because of how well he did in the preseason, and then we had the Champions League, so it was important for him. But we all kind of figured that Boyan Mayor would transition into more of a starting role, or certainly get more minutes than he has. And it's going to be interesting because we've also seen Cabrera go to Kevin Garcia at center back before Boyan Mayor. So, yeah, you definitely see that kind of personality type where he's got his favorites, and certainly as a teacher, as you said, you do have your kind of favorites in the classroom, or in this case on the pitch. Yeah.
So going to what you were asking, Jesus, apparently in MLS, Fuenmayor has played 429 minutes in 2019. As far as 2018, I'll have to... Oh, here you are. In 2019, like I said, 429. In 2018, in the whole season, 1,763.
So, I mean, what's the reason? And it's actually one of the questions that I was going to ask Wilmer Cabrera tomorrow during the press conference, but obviously now I won't get the chance. But I wonder what was keeping him off the field, because just like Derrick said, how do you put Kevin in front of Fuenmayor, and Fuenmayor you brought him to help solidify your defense, which he did last year. I think last year he was solid enough. He wasn't bad. He was just solid. He had some good games. He had some mistakes. Still a young player, 22, but then now I think he's 23. So, maybe there's something to the fact that Wilmer Cabrera had favorites and he held grudges against some of these players.
I think one of the biggest examples that I have of that is Charlie Ward. With conversations that I've had with him, he was extremely displeased about how Cabrera treated him when he was with the Houston Dynamo. As not only to him, but to also with, what's his name? George Malky, having come from RGVFC and pretty much given 0 minutes with the Houston Dynamo, but did not even get loaned down to RGVFC, and so they were just resting themselves out there, and the fact also the way how Wilmer personally treated Charlie as well. It left them a sour taste of not only Wilmer but of the whole Dynamo organization as a whole, and those are words directly straight from the horse's mouth, pretty much. So it is something that this anonymous poll, it's true, because there is proof that this does happen with Wilmer Cabrera. Another example you mentioned about putting players out of position, Michael Salazar. Why does he keep on putting Michael Salazar on the wing when the best we saw him at RGV, and we continue to see the best out of him, is in the striker position? Yes, he missed 4 clear opportunities against America, which was disappointing to me, obviously. But when you continue to put him in the wrong position, I don't know why. It's like, what are you trying to do, Wilmer? Like, are you trying to experiment? Are you trying to... I don't know. So, sometimes with substitutions, sometimes with lineups, you didn't have a general idea about what Wilmer Cabrera wanted to do with this team. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and another player that was not getting minutes as well is Pena, who is seemingly left off the team sheet time and time again and in favor of players like Michael Salazar.
Mhm.
The playing out of position thing, it feels like he's trying to do, see what sticks and what doesn't. You're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what works. And the problem with that kind of strategy as a coach is strategy is going to be different, or things are going to work differently depending on who you're playing against. Colorado is not going to play the same as your LAFC. So, some things you can kind of figure out, like whether or not players struggle, but when they do seem to work, it doesn't necessarily means it will always work. And
Mhm.
that's what's kind of frustrating and interesting at the same time, where we saw 1 week Tomas Martinez was thrown out wide in favor of bringing in centrally Tommy McNamara. And then we saw that same strategy again, and it was nowhere near as effective as it was the previous week. So, yeah, I think a lot of these things, as well as players getting frustrated, it could very well be on top of the results. The ownership is deciding that we want to make our players happy, because if we decide to sell them, then we want happy players that are playing well, because we can get more money for them in return.
Now, I will say this from a journalist side of things. I respect Wilmer Cabrera. He always answered all of my questions. Even some questions I know he didn't want to answer, and I know by the look he wasn't happy answering them. But he was always a stand-up guy, and so I respect him in that aspect. I have nothing bad to say about him as a person, and so. But as a coach, I think, I wonder what would happen if he would have stayed at RGV. He had a good first season with RGV. So it's interesting. I wonder if he lands in anywhere.
But
Take some time off.
here's the thing, Jesus. You mentioned Wilmer's first year in 2016 with RGVFC. You can tell by my flag back there. But look at the difference in rosters between that 2016 season in the USL compared to what was given to the coaches, whether it was Junior Gonzalez or Jerson Echeverry right now in 2017, 2018, and 2019. In 2016, you had players with USL experience. You had players like Kevin Garcia that came in from Europe, to play in the USL Championship. You had good players from the Houston Dynamo like Taylor Hunter. You had a good future superstar like Memo Rodriguez, Zenon Katic, Camilo Monroy, Charlie Ward, one of the best passers in the league has ever seen, coming in from Stoke City Academy. And so you wonder, like, with that kind of team, of course you expect that team to be competitive, to get second place in the Western Conference. And when it came to playoffs, they choked. Whether it was because of a coach's decision by benching what was his name? Callum Irving, for whatever reason, benched your best goalkeeper in the whole season. You bench him for the playoffs, and you lose against Oklahoma City Energy 3-2. You were winning 2-0, and you completely fall apart in the second half, and they beat you. So
isn't that last game of Cabrera with RGB?
That is correct.
It's pretty much what ended up being his MO here with the Dynamo. Give up leads late in the game. That's constantly what the Dynamo did. If the Dynamo don't give up as many leads last season, they're probably in the playoffs. Similar to this season, they haven't done it as much, but they have done. Look at New York City FC; they were winning that game. So same with Philadelphia. And now I'll say the problem with the RGB roster, I'll put them more on the Dynamo front office. I think they haven't used RGB how they said they were going to use RGB. They haven't signed any players. There hasn't been that pipeline yet. And I think 3 years in, we should have seen one player. Not only count Memo. I think Memo was always going to be already with the first team.
Yeah.
So But beyond that, there hasn't been one player that has made that transition, and I think that's a whole systematic change that the Dynamo needs.
But that's
Started that with the academy, but that's going to take some time. And yeah,
And not only that, my biggest issue, the way the Dynamo front office, but mostly Wilmer Cabrera, to me, I come back at it. This was Wilmer Cabrera's decisions on when to pull players from RGVFC, when to loan them down, and the way that he was handling RGVFC just made no sense. How are you going to send a player down there the night before without practicing with your team or anything like that, much less having them train the whole week or maybe 3 or 4 weeks to get accustomed to USL, have Gerson Echeverry the opportunity to coach him, fight for their spot, first of all, because just because you're an MLS player doesn't necessarily mean that you should be automatically guaranteed a starting spot in the roster. And, you have all these examples of Charlie Ward, of Michael Salazar, Eric Bird, George Malky, of RGV players that were pulled up to the first team in my opinion, too early in their development, then made the second mistake of not giving them any minutes at all, whether at RGV or with the Houston Dynamo, to let them continue to develop. And you have all these players that were good with RGVFC. The best example right now, Todd Warden. Todd Warden, the best player, our captain last year, one of the best passers of this team, and he's playing with Portland Timbers too. Why? Because Matt Jordan's like, oh, well, we only give you 2 or 3 years, and if you don't show that you're ready for the first team, then we don't need you. How are you gonna expect RGVFC to be consistent with every year, every 2 years, you have to completely overhaul the roster just because the Dynamo doesn't think that these players are good enough, and the ones that they do pull, turns out they're still not ready for MLS. So like every aspect of how the Dynamo handle RGVFC, how they handle this pipeline is completely out of whack. And I feel like with a new coach, I think I would love to have a coach that not only can be good with the first team, but also has a general understanding on how to deal with the pipeline of academy players. And that's one of the other topics now that we kind of branched into that I wanted to talk about, is that, and this is thanks to Texas Soccer Journal. He brings up this topic for us. He's saying that if the Dynamo are not going to be a huge spending team like LAFC or Toronto, you name it, then shouldn't they just be relying on their academy, and preparing that academy to bolster up that pipeline, develop a player, make that player good in MLS, and then sell them, whether it's abroad in Europe or or South America, et cetera, and make a surplus. What do you think should be done?
I mean, I've said this to other press at press box outside at practices. If the Dynamo are not going to be the spending team that Toronto FC, LAFC, and all these other big spenders, they have to go through the FC Dallas model, which is build your academy. Now, FC Dallas has had years doing this. I mean, they've been doing this for years. Their academy is probably the best in all of MLS. I mean, you have players like Chris Richards. He played youth soccer here in the Houston area, and he went to FC Dallas. I can probably name a couple more, not off the top of my head, but I know there's more players that played youth soccer in Houston before they moved to either FC Dallas or to another MLS youth team where they knew that there was a better chance for them to make the first team. I interviewed Cabrera about blanking out on his name. He played at the All-Star game, the homegrown game.
McHugh,
Eric McHugh, and Wilmer Cabrera's answer was that he's a project at 18 and that he could probably see him play with the first team 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years. If it's FC Dallas, we'll probably already see him on the first team. And if not on the first team, he's probably spending every game playing with the USL squad, with the RGV Toros. If they really want to push this, push the academy forward, they need to show youth players that, look, if you play well, this is what can happen with you. And I think Eric McHugh should have been starting every game with RGV Toros this season.
Or at least be available to Coach Echeverry week in and week out. So, like I said, to fight for the position against Kyle Adams or Robert Castellanos or Connor Donovan, and to prove that, okay, if I can be better than the current USL starters, then maybe I can fight to, in the future, fight for that MLS starting spot. But they only send them like once a month to play at RGV. Like, makes no sense. Derrick?
Yeah, some of it's a tricky situation of parent club and your affiliate. If you're the Dynamo in this situation, you want to keep your players as long as you can, because you can see them and you can see how they're developing, but also their insurance, because injuries happen at the training grounds. And you want to make sure that you can field a squad on game day. So some of that's a little bit just insurance stuff and some of the natural relationship, but I totally agree that it definitely is something that needs to be streamlined a little bit more effective, not just as a process, but also what's best for the players themselves, so that your whole system is more efficient and at developing talent. I do want to touch on something that Jesus said earlier about Cabrera, and what you also said about if we had tied these last two games, he would still have a job. I want to say also that Cabrera, the start of this season, we got off to the best start in franchise history. Just pretty interesting, because we've had some really good teams. Injuries have been a problem, and so have it's been a busy schedule. But it's just unfortunate. One thing that we've seen from Cabrera is that the consistency and not ability to grow, like we've seen from last season and this season, giving up goals in the last 15 minutes or so. So I just wanted to retouch on that before continuing on, just because I thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah, and that really is an excellent point. So, guys, we're gonna go on a quick break. That way, we can have Laura Gomez jump into this discussion as well, and freshen up the Zoom meeting. So, should be back in about 2 or 3 minutes. So don't go away just yet. Keep on discussing in the chat. The chat is really spicy right now, and I love having all these different viewpoints on there in the chat. So keep it civil, guys. I don't want any fighting or any offensive stuff going on. Keep it civil, guys. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Don't go away just yet.
Felt like I'm on the outside, never fit in. Watch the world pass me by, black hole trying to chase a sunrise. Every day I was on my own, can't see my hurt, cause I'm a ghost. In the crowd I still felt alone, yeah. But then we found each other, and everything turned around. Broken heart to another. You never let me down. You never let me down. Ooh. Even when my world gets all fucked up and comes crashing to the ground, you never let me down. the stars, the more I just fade. Couldn't see how anything changes. Some days I could barely wake up. The voices inside, they told me give up, and I almost did, yeah. But then we found each other, and everything turned around. One broken heart to another. You never let me down. You never let me down. Ooh. Even when my world gets all fucked up and comes crashing to the ground, you never let me down. You never let me Even when my world gets all fucked up and comes crashing to the ground, you never let me down. You never let me down.
All right, guys. Welcome back to Generation Orange. Once again, if you guys are new to this channel, be sure to subscribe and like this video and share it with all of your Dynamo friends, so that way they can also come in and listen to this really good discussion that we're having tonight. Just to let y'all know, if you guys are barely coming in, tonight we do have Jesus Acevedo of the Bayou Citian. We have Derrick Stowers of Dynamo Theory. And right now we also have Laura Gomez from Pro Soccer USA and MLSsoccer.com. Laura, how are you doing tonight?
Hey guys, I'm so sorry for the delay. You know, breaking news, you can't control it. So I had to kind of join you guys a little bit later because I had to, of course, write about Cabrera leaving or being forced off the Houston Dynamo, as head coach.
So what are your Derrick, Jesus, and I we discussed our thoughts on the Cabrera sacking, but what are your thoughts before we go on to the next topic? What are your thoughts on the sacking?
You know what? It was something that I had talked about with several fans that were, been following the team, and it was something that, it's a little bit shocking because I personally would have thought that they would have waited until the end of the season. The Dynamo started off really well. I even did several articles talking about how, it was one of the best starting seasons for them. They were really good. Manotas had just signed again. The team was looking strong. And then, after like the break or like entering the summer, they kind of just like missed the bus to get to the playoffs. So this kind of, it does make me think that the team is a little bit more serious of really making it to the playoffs, because to fire a coach in more than half of the season gone by, makes you think about what's going on within the team itself. Mm-hmm. I think that, will the Dynamo make the playoffs right now? I mean, there's not many games left. Cristian Ramirez is great. His first game, he made a goal, but will that be enough? There's a lot of questions right now, and it's like a fresh news and things like that. I did expect it, that Cabrera was going to be let go. I just was not expecting it right now. But I guess the losses, how many losses back-to-back? 4, 2 at home and 2 on the road. And only, I think, 1 game won on the road, and the rest were losses, and I think 1 tie. It's something that a team can't survive only off of winning home games. And then when they stop winning home games, that's a red flag. So I think the Dynamo made the correct decision. But, it also sucks because then the Dynamo is going to have a new coach come in, and you have to give him time to train the players. The players have to learn new ways. So it's like a whole process. And it's like a year for the players to get used to the coach. And that's what Cabrera and other coaches have said, we're getting to know each other, and that's like a whole season. So the next season's like, okay, well, we know each other, but we have new players. So, I mean, how can you break that cycle? So it's just a lot of questions right now, so many questions. But I think that, yeah, once again, I'm saying, yeah, I was expecting for them to let him go, just not right now.
You know, I want to add to what you're talking about, Laura. I think that's not a good thing for a coach to say, like, oh, well, we got new players, we need to get them to learn how to play together. I mean, look at LAFC. They had a tremendous first year last season, and they're a completely new franchise, new club. So I think some of these things do fall on the coach. You know, if you look at this season, look at Matias, what he's done with San Jose. Same players from last season, essentially, and they're probably one of the best teams in the league. So you can also go to the New England Revolution. They started off this season bad, and they cut the cord quick, and they brought in Bruce Arena, same player, and they're on having a better season. So I think, you know, sometimes the coach and the players, maybe they just don't mix. And, you know, like I said earlier, maybe the players, you know, Cabrera's words were just falling on deaf ears. Maybe they just got tired of him as a coach, and they just weren't responding to what they wanted. But I think it's also, we have to put some of this on the players. You know, we can't just say this is all the coach.
Oh, yeah.
I think,
and I agree with you and what you're saying, but I would add that, you know, it's been proven that when teams kind of like pick up and move, like the Dynamo that moved from their original home and came here and won, you know, 2 championships. Yeah, the teams knew per se, but the players knew each other, and it was the same head coach. So it was very, you know, big of it for them to just like be picked up and dropped off of another city like Houston. And then when you compare it to a team with what you just mentioned, the LAFC, it's different because look at the players that they have. Like, they have a lot of veteran star players. I mean, they have Vela. So I think it's different circumstances. I understand what you're saying, and you're right. I mean, right, why the Dynamo started off so hot and now like burnt out? It's you know, it's the coaching, it's the players' attitude. They were gonna go into like, you know, just the attitudes against the refs and just different things. So it's like a combination of so many things of why the Dynamo is where it is right now.
I think that's a good point because it's how the coaching and players, I mean, the two affect each other. The two, you know, if you've got one player under one coach and they're not, you know, seeing eye to eye, he might not play as well as under a different coach. I'm going to kind of just throw this, toss a question out for everybody to kind of chime in if they want. But do you think that this kind of sacking Cabrera now, is that sort of an admission that we're not necessarily prioritizing, or we've realized that the playoffs are kind of out of hand? Like, it's just not going to happen. And last year we kind of were in that position as well, but we were able to fall back, and the club could save some face with the supporter or the blanking on the Open Cup.
The Cup.
Thank you. Yeah. But they can't do that this year. So is that kind of, do we see that? Because if we stayed with Cabrera through the end of the year, they have to kind of say something about how they're, you know, I don't know, some kind of excuse to a degree. Versus doing this now, they can now kind of test and essentially get one of their coaching candidates some pressure, or you know, they can actually see how they perform.
Well, you know, the press release, the quote of General Manager Matt Jordan is basically that the club decided to have a fresh perspective and into the final third of the season and make a push to qualify for the playoffs. And that's a quote from today's press release when they officially said that Calera has been let go. So, I mean, to your question, I'm like, maybe they're not officially saying they're giving up, because what they're saying right now is that they're trying, I mean, this change has been made in order to be able to make a push for the playoffs. So they haven't completely let go of the playoffs. Internally, they might be like, well, we're not going to make it. But, of course, they can't go out so early and still that the players are not, you know, here yet and go off and say, well, we're giving up on the season. So, you know, it's something that it had to happen. We'll see how the team benefits from it, or even they're worse off. So, I mean, the first game is going to be here at home, and that'll be kind of like pleasant to see what the rest of the season looks like.
To me, at the end of the day, this is a sign of we there is an opportunity to make playoffs, but it was never going to happen if we still kept Cabrera. That's a simple. The simplest I can make this is this team. What we have, what Matt Jordan have come up with for this roster is good enough to fight for the last playoff spot. But under Wilmer Cabrera, it's not going to happen. Let's get rid of him and see what some fresh ideas by David Arnaud are going to bring in with the talent level of this roster.
I mean, I'll say this: having interviewed Matt Jordan plenty of times, and knowing how GMs think, they're never going to say, "Okay, we're just shutting it down." Of course, they're always going to keep saying that.
Exactly.
I go back to when they fired Owen Coyle and they made Wade Barrett interim head coach. Even to the last 5 games, when they were mathematically still there, but they had to run the table, they were still saying, "Oh, we're still pushing for the playoffs. We're still pushing for the playoffs." Yes, you can say that, but I think in the back of your mind, it was going to be hard. And I think that's the situation that they're in right now. I think they have 3 home games left, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
3 home games left. So let's say that, argument's sake, that they win all those 3 games. That's 9 points. Do you think this team can win 6 road games? I think they need to run the table to make the playoffs. They need to go undefeated to have any realistic chance. Maybe you can drop 1 game, but this team has shown that on the road, it just cannot do that. Even in general, many MLS teams don't perform well on the road unless you're a giant like LAFC or even Toronto when they were on their big run. So I think I agree with a lot of what she said when she first started talking, that I thought Cabrera was gone after this season, but I thought they were going to do it at the end of the season. I feel that by them firing him today, it's kind of like a scapegoat, and it's something for the fans. So that way the club can say, "Hey, we're doing something. Okay, we're doing something. We hear you guys." So I think this is kind of for that purpose as well. Because I see it tough. Davey Arnaud, yeah, he's had experience playing in MLS, but he's never been a head coach. Similar situation that interim coach Wade Barrett had.
Yeah.
Davey Arnaud, he's been an interim coach. I mean, he's been an assistant coach under Wilmer Cabrera, and I think 1 year under Peter Vermees. So he doesn't have as much experience, so we don't know what kind of coach he's going to be. So, I think these 9 games, the Matt Jordan and the club are looking at it as saying, like, okay, what can you do with these 9 games? What kind of play are you going to get out of these players that Cabrera couldn't? Is he going to change things up? Is he still going to go with the 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to call it, or is he going to make some changes? Yeah. I personally think if they were going to do it, just do it at the end of the season, but
so
yeah.
Why he did it though.
Yeah, and I think sort of like what you were saying before, no GM is going to go out there and say, "We're throwing in the towel, the season's done." They're going to do what they can to make the most of it, and I think that is represented by, yes, I think that this is basically a interview per se for Arnaud to kind of make his statement for the job. And by the way, if he does run the rest of these games, give him the job. He's earned it. But on the other hand, too, I think that it also sort of shows the relationship between Wilmer Cabrera and Matt Jordan, because Matt Jordan, like you were saying earlier, Jesus, he had a really good offseason, bringing in reinforcements, and we're now seeing just the results not come. So it could be just Matt Jordan wanting to give Arnaud this shot, because just game after game, like Laura was saying, we lost the last 4. Some of those were 1-0 games that were winnable, and some of these other ones were just show that Cabrera has kind of lost the locker room. So a lot of these things all play together, I think.
So a couple of things that I do want to bring up. Number one, and I want to thank Red and Orange Kenny from the Dynamo Discord for compiling these stats. And just to summarize it, is that under the amount of, when you compare the amount of games that Owen Coyle was the head coach for the Houston Dynamo, and you compare the last number of games, same number of games of Wilmer Cabrera, Coyle had better stats, especially away, than Wilmer Cabrera. And the fact of the matter is, like I mentioned it last week on the show, it made no sense to me that with better stats, just a little bit better, it was still mediocre, but with better stats, that the Houston Dynamo decided to part ways with Owen Coyle, but decided to keep Wilmer Cabrera as the Dynamo head coach. And now we've seen now after these 2 away games that they about had it with his results, and it was time for something different. Another thing I do want to bring up, and going back to with the next 9 games that are left in the season, these are the next games. You play at home versus Colorado. You go away to Frisco to play FC Dallas. You go to Kansas City to play Sporting KC. You host Minnesota United. You go to Vancouver. You host Orlando City. You go to LAFC. You go to Real Salt Lake, and then you host the LA Galaxy. Let's be honest, guys. With the way this team has been playing, especially on the road, the playoffs are out of the picture. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, I to be honest, I also think that the playoffs are out just because, like what Jesus was saying, you have to basically go undefeated, and I don't think the team has it within them right now, whether it's a mental problem, whether it's because they're really gonna make changes starting off with the head coach, or because the problem was the head coach, because the problems, inside the locker room with players within themselves. I have heard several players kind of hint and say that there are players that do give it their all in the playing field, and then there's others that do not. So I kind of feel that not necessarily saying that the locker room is divided, but perhaps saying that there is that disconnect between some of them that feel like they're giving it their all, hustling, trying to do everything they need, and then feeling a disconnect from several players that are either saying, hey, I'm going to leave, I'm not happy here, or, give up because we're not going to make it. And to add on to that, what Jesus also said, about winning the rest of the games, they're not only having to win the rest of the games, but they also kind of have to stay tuned and see what else the other teams are either winning or losing, because they're also having to wait on them on results of other teams. And that's something that you never want to do. You want to go out there and actually win and do what you have to do to not be stressed out in the final, moments, and be also waiting for results of other teams.
Now, I will also add this. After the Leagues Cup match, we can say the Dynamo dominated America. Maybe not dominated, but they outplayed America. Were unfortunate to lose in penalties. He also said, I don't know why this Dynamo team can play like this every game. And I think that speaks volumes, that they played up to the level of America, and yet they couldn't play that way, create that many chances. Salazar had 4 clear opportunities, and I don't bring that up to bag on him. I'll bring that up to say they created those opportunities with Salazar playing at the striker position, his preferred position. And I think that quote from Kyoto said, I don't know why the Dynamo can't play like this every game. If the Dynamo play like that every game this season, we're not having this discussion about Wilmer Cabrera being let go. So I think it could be said that some of these players got Wilmer Cabrera fired by not playing up to their level, or just as you were saying, Laura, maybe not giving it their all on the pitch.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just going to say that I think a lot of us have been saying that this team, from the best starting 11 that we can put out there, they can compete with just about anybody, I think, in this league. Save maybe the LAFCs of the MLS. But there's so much potential. We talk about the top 3 of at least Kyoto and Manotas, and we're not even mentioning Memo with that group. There's so much attacking talent there. And then we've strengthened our back line. And like we were talking about earlier, Foynmeyer can't even get on the pitch because of how well Maynard's been playing. There's so much potential here that I think is just not being utilized correctly, or the players like Jesus was saying earlier, we have to put some of this on on the players as well. And like Laura was saying, that yes, some of them might not be putting it in, and we kind of see that. I mean, there are times where you just see the attacking, pressing mentality where players are getting right up on the second ball to put that away, and then we see that check out and turn off, where they're now conceding a lot of space. They're trying to slow the game down, and that could be them not giving their all. They're saving some energy for whatever reason. I don't know.
Laura?
And I mean, add on to that, so it kind of leaves us with the same question that I know that we've asked ourselves within the press box, within, when we're talking to each other, when we're talking to fans. So it's kind of like that question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So basically it's like, okay, so does this mean that now that the Dynamo does not have Wilmer Cabrera, will the Dynamo flourish, revert, be like the Phoenix that comes back from the ashes because they got rid of the problem? Or is the problem deeper? Is the problem the players? There's so many different combinations that can give you a different outcome that it's kind of like a guessing game unless, we don't know something that, the people inside the locker room, the general managers and everybody else knows that we don't know of what has been going on wrong for the team to kind of like go down like this slide of like, losing streaks. And like, someone was saying right now is that the power that is up front is big. So there's a lot of players that can score. So it's kind of ridiculous and kind of like what is going on. Even Manota said, what kind of karma are we paying because none of the goals would go in? And like Jesus said, when we saw the Dynamo play against America, they were not playing with their A team. America was playing with a lot of their A team. The Dynamo was playing with the B team. Not to say that the B team isn't good, but I'm just saying the regular starters were not playing, and they put up a hell of a fight. So going back to what Kyoto also said, why can't they play like this always? So it's kind of questions. I'm like, in that sense, you can defend Cabrera and say, well, Cabrera put the people that he needed to put in the pitch because look what he did against America, or even against Tigres. They did a good job. So it's that question of like, okay, well, Cabrera did what he had to do. He chose the good players, and this is how they played. But then when they play with, a team that's not from, outside of the MLS, they play better than what they play with MLS teams. So it's like that question of like, what came first? Like I said, the egg or the chicken?
I'll add, I think it's 50-50. I think it was half the players and half the coach. Because here's the thing, I'll go back to what Mike Jordan said. He said Cabrera is a teacher of the game. When Elise came, okay, at least he's a fast player. He can take players on. He can never finish shots. How many shots has he missed where he was point blank in these last 3 years? And if Cabrera was a teacher of the game,
Too many.
he was too many. Don't you think if Cabrera was a teacher of the game, don't you think that he would have taught at least how to put his shots on target? Look at Christian Ramirez. He had one shot that he created for himself and he banged it. Do you think at least hits that shot against Philadelphia?
No.
And there it is. And I think I've said this to many of you guys in the press box, and I've said it to some fans. If Elise could finish, he'd be playing overseas in Europe. If Kyoto was a
better team, yes.
And if Kyoto was a consistent player, he'd be with any Liga MX team right now. There's a reason why those teams are playing here in MLS with the Dynamo. So if Cabrera was the teacher of the game, like Matt Jordan praised it, and he said it so many times to me when he hired him, and even after he hired him, these players would be better. Now, I'll say this. I give him credit for Mauro Manotas. I think he's helped Mauro Manotas come along, but I think it's also Mauro Manotas has put in the work. And I think that's one player we cannot question play on the pitch.
Yeah.
And going back to what go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Also, if Elise's first touch was a little bit better, he'd be gone. I think one thing that is going to be incredibly telling is the kind of performance we see Saturday against Colorado, because Arno won't have had the time to put in his kind of system. So it's going to be the players that we see. So who's going to show up for that game? I think that's going to be incredibly telling.
And just to add on to what you guys were saying about Ellis, it's crazy. I mean, how many times have the people in the stands called out a goal? Because, he has the speed. He has incredible speed. He does know how to control the ball. And it's just crazy to me that he is not able to finish. And it's something that we asked Cabrera, what's going on? Why can't the team finish? Specifically Ellis. And he's like, well, you know what? I do work with him. I do try. And there's only a certain thing that coaches can do. You can have the best coach, but if the player is not showing up, not putting in the work, perhaps like Manota has put in the work, then there's nothing that coach can do. So, I mean, what will we see next? I mean, will these players stay? Are they going to leave? I mean, I think that's another question that's up in the air right now, because even before any of this Cabrera deal, people were already, signing Manotas to Cruz Azul in Mexico and Ellis somewhere else as well, and they even threw in the name of Kyoto in there. So it's like, I feel like there's a lot of question marks around the Houston team right now.
And, also I'll say, and like I said, I think the only player that I can truly say that he helped was Mario Manotas. There's last season, Mario Manotas told me that Cabrera challenged him and told him, you know how to score, but how come you don't score more headers? After he said that, Manotas put in the work, and there were like 3 games in a row where he scored goals on hit with headers. And he told me it's because Coach Cabrera challenged me, and he lived up to it. He stepped up to the challenge. So I'm saying that's why I say it's 50-50. It's 50 the players, and it's 50% Wilmer Cabrera as to why he was fired.
So what I did want to also point out was, and you discussed it with Kyoto, Jesus, but I remember as well Tomás Martinez mentioning the similar thing when they played Tigres at Estadio Universitario in El Volcán, in front of 45,000 roaring Tigres fans. Held them what, a 1-0?
Mm-hmm.
Tomás Martinez said, "This proves to us as Dynamo players that we can take on anybody in MLS." Did we see that? Not away from home.
Maybe also this. Maybe they just need to pack BBA Stadium and the fans need to boo them. Because it seems that when the Houston Dynamo play against fans that are booing them or they're opposing them, they play up to par.
You just triggered Sean right there.
But you know what though? It's not like the Houston Dynamo team can say, "Oh, well, our stadium is always full, so we feel the energy completely from the people that are watching us," because that has not been the case. I mean, the stadium is now getting more people out there, whether because they changed marketing tactics or because they thought the Dynamo was getting better for whatever reason. But look how they played against America, and they were not the home team against America or against Tigres. So I mean, that's like it's interesting to me that if they don't get the energy from the home team, they perform better at home than when they perform outside, which should be kind of the same deal,
So going on, with this topic, the question to you guys when it comes to the Dynamo fan base, it's a question not only just the fan base in general, but also supporters groups. What is lacking for the stadium to fill up? Who's at fault? Is it marketing department? Is it the fact that people just don't care about MLS soccer here in the Houston area? What are your thoughts on that?
All of the above.
Yes, for sure, all of the above. But I know I can speak to Michael and Laura, and I first started covering the Houston Dynamo games. We were just students at U of H, so we would see them at Robertson Stadium. And I know she will agree with me. The games there, it was mostly packed, if not 75% packed, every single game. So I don't know whether it was. I haven't compared it, but I'm sure ticket prices have also gone up. I'm sure marketing has changed. Marketing has maybe been more towards, hey, family friendly, as opposed to, hey, we're soccer crazy fans. So. But I do think, just like Derrick said, it's all of the above, and I think if you put a good product on the field, fans will show, Whenever they made it to the Western Conference Finals against Seattle Sounders, that home game was packed. That's probably the most packed they had been for Dynamo supporters, because I know against America, the game was packed, but that was, 80-20 America fans?
Yeah.
So this city likes winners. I'll say this thing. I love Houston, this city, but Houston is a city of Mayweather fans. You know, look at the Astros. You know, that stadium wasn't packed when the Astros sucked for 5 years. They sucked.
And they couldn't give those tickets away.
They gave those tickets away, and now you can't buy tickets. So it's just that kind of situation. This city is a Mayweather city. They love winners. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's
And
I think exactly it. And they kind of lack an identity in a sense. Like the Dynamo culture doesn't really say like you were saying, it's just, are they diehard soccer fans out there, or are we family? Kind of like the Dallases of the league, so to speak. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing. I think that there are some things that just I've noticed that there could be improvements on. I'm not messing with ticket stuff or marketing, any of that, but there's just some stuff about the way that the supporter groups and the front office, they need to have a stronger relationship than the one they have now. Because, you know, when the players come out onto the pitch, most of the supporters aren't even in their seats. They're walking to their seats at that time. They need to get them there. They need to keep doing these little tifo things because they're awesome whenever they come out. Things like that connect the fans to what's on the field. But at the end of the day, like you were saying, it's just, we like winners, and they got to win. And so there's a lot of things that they need to do, but that is what they need to do to get the most butts in the seats.
Laura?
Well, I mean, I guess to add on to what both of you guys have said, I think that it's this combination word. It's a combination of different things. Just because Houston, I mean, the Dynamo team is still new. There's a lot of different diversities here in Houston. So, you know, like me, with my home team that I first learned to love and learned to follow because of my parents, it's a team from Colombia. But now you see second generations that, you know, their parents might like, you know, America or might like Tigres, but their children are brought up with that Dynamo feeling because it's the only stadium here. So they start to love that team. So it's that growth and generational thing that is going from, oh yeah, I do love my parents' team, but I don't live there. I don't get to go to the stadium all the time. So I have the Dynamo that I can go and visit and support. So I think it's something that is going to get better with the years because the Dynamo is still somewhat new. And like Jesus said, I mean, and when you say the Houston loves winners, yes and no, because if you go to a Texans game, it's still full. And they are not winning, and they're not going to win. I mean, not to talk about that football.
I think,
but
I
the
think,
Astros.
you know, yeah, sorry, but I just want to say, you know, Texans, no matter what, this is like football. Football, it's number one. It's like football and then God in the state. You know? No matter how the
exactly.
show up.
Exactly, but why? But it's because it's also a generational thing. Because they're like, oh, my dad liked American football. Oh yeah, my grandfather did too. So that's why I say that the Dynamo and MLS is so young compared to American football, to NFL, that it's going to be a generational growth as well. Because even when we go to the, you know, games that have Mexican teams come here, you see a lot of the children wearing a Dynamo shirt. So that's what I'm saying. It's something that's going to take a while. It's generational. And also, if they know that it's going to take a while to grow those homegrown fans, the Dynamo has not done a good job to bring star players. Something like, you know, LAFC has done, LA Galaxy has done, Red Bull has done in the past. The Galaxy, like we're saying, has in the past. DC United, you know, there's different teams that have tried to get that star player. The Houston Dynamo has had, you know, in the last years, they tried to place Eric Torres as that player. But, you know, he was still premature, I guess, in the era of being well known in the Mexican national team. And he wasn't, you know, a Chicharito. He was not a Vela. So it's something that the Dynamo hasn't made up its mind if it's going to have a star or not, whether it be something with the budget or if they want to head down the road of saying we have only homegrown players, something like Dallas has done. So I think it's a lot of things that maybe that's why the stadium is not as full as it is. They haven't done a good job in attracting people to the stadium with that big player that everybody, if you talk to the general fan that maybe has never gone to see the Dynamo, their response is going to be like, well, why don't they bring, Zlatan over here? Or why isn't Vela over here because we're broke, or things like that. So that's the sentiment of people that have never been, or they're not interested in the MLS, or they don't have smaller kids, or they really don't love football as much as other people do. But I will say this, the marketing has changed. I know that you guys have seen the difference in the last home games. The food is delicious. The ambience is really good. They did that 713 marketing thing that has paid off very well. I think it was $7 entrance, $1 hot dogs, and $3 beers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that has helped out because that wasn't being done before. And the Houston Astros, I mean, they had take your own food into the stadium because that's how bad they wanted people to go. And look, within a year and a half has changed because they won, but it was a slow process because nobody, the Astros didn't win in a year. The Astros, at least the last 5 years, those moves have been made by the general manager to create that team. And I think what frustrates Dynamo fans is that they have not seen those big moves that they want to see to make that, championship a reality. And that's why they're like, well, why should I go spend money on them? I might as well go to the Astros now since they're winning. Or, even the Rockets. The Rockets, I mean, they haven't really made, for me, I think that they haven't made big advancements to win a championship, but they have big names now. So it's a combination of getting those big names down and making the people go, at least for those big names, if not for the team that's not going to go to a championship.
Yeah. So, guys, we're going to take another quick break right here, another 2-minute break. So don't go away just yet. Keep on discussing right there in the chat. We will, when we come back, we will continue to discuss the attendance problem at Houston Dynamo. Also, the next topic after that, Elise, Kyoto, Manotas. Should they stay, or should we cut, or at least with Elise and Kyoto, should we cut our losses? So don't go away just yet. We will be right back.
Photo of you in my mind, on the table under lights. There's no one in but you and I. This neon town is yours and mine. And I said, hey, Carissa. Stayed up through the days and night, lay and we watched the world get light. Hey, Carissa. Sunlight, freedom in your eyes. Please don't leave now. Photo of you in my mind, on the table under lights. There's no one in but you and I. This neon town is yours and mine. And I said, hey, Carissa. Stayed up through the days and night, lay and we watched the world get light. Hey, Carissa. Sunlight, freedom in your eyes. Please don't leave now.
All right, guys, we're back for more Generation Orange. We're continuing this discussion about what the Dynamo can do to fill that stadium, because we know from watching teams like Boca Juniors on TV, River Plate, Tigres, Real Madrid, Manchester United, you name it. Having full stadium and having fans at the stadium that are engaged with the team or what's going on the pitch to put pressure on the opponent, you name it, etc., it makes a difference. It pumps up your own players and it intimidates the opponent. Now, you brought up a good point. I don't remember if it was you, Laura, or you, Jesus, about seeing kids with Houston Dynamo jerseys, and to me, that's the key. That's the key right there. If you want to go for the long term, and I mentioned it not only in Gen Orange but also in Down in the Valley, is if you want to go for a long-term sustainability of the fan base, you go for the kids. Because what happens with the adults? More often than not, they're already fans of Chivas, América, Tigres, Atlético Nacional, River, whatever the team they go for. To them, supporting another team besides that, it's like betrayal, because you're betraying, not only you're betraying the team, you're betraying their tradition, the team that your parents went for, the team that your grandparents went for, you name it. Whereas with the kids who haven't necessarily gone to Estadio Universitario or the Azteca or Old Trafford, but they have gone to the Houston Dynamo games, they're gonna fall easier in love with the Houston Dynamo and what it stands for, and creates the culture.
I would.
I mean,
say
I do. Go ahead, Jesus.
When they played America, Jorge Clara from Deportes Total USA, he put out a photo. It was a photo of a father with an America jersey and his son, maybe 8-10 years, he had a Dynamo jersey. And I think that speaks exactly to what you're talking about, Laura. Now, here's the problem with that is, how can they hold him? How can they hold that young Dynamo fan's attention? Because he's only going to get older. And as he gets older, he may start liking other sports. Because to be honest, I think about me when I was that age, soccer was my first love. But that's just because I didn't find basketball. Once I found basketball, I was all in. Basketball was my sport, and that's what I want to be when I grow up with a professional basketball player. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
but because you're super tall.
Well, I wasn't tall at that time, all right? but, I guess I was tall. I actually played center back when I was a kid. But my point remains is they need to make sure they keep that little kid's attention. And to add to that, I think it was a mistake, or not a mistake, but I think something that the Dynamo marketing failed to do was during the America game, they could have said, bring your Leagues Cup ticket and you get half off any Dynamo game. Or bring your League Cup ticket and you get half off the next Dynamo game. Or, hey, here's a free ticket. Like, sometimes the Dynamo has to take a loss to fill these stadiums. But obviously we know this franchise doesn't want to do that. But I think that would have been a perfect opportunity to say, bring your ticket, you get half off on the next Dynamo home game. And I think that would have filled the stadium for at least the next Dynamo home game. And if it's a good Dynamo home game, maybe people are like, oh, you know what? I like this team. I can come back and see this team play once again.
Yeah, and I agree with the things that you're saying. Once you do capture that young fan, how are you gonna hold on to them? And I think, like I said, I think it's a generational thing as well, and how much you love soccer. Because I know for sure, like, I love soccer, no matter if I end up living somewhere else or if I'm here in Houston or, going to a different country, I'm still going to look for soccer, and because of my parents, because of my father, I do follow Atlético Nacional from Colombia quite a bit. But, I live in Houston. I've been in Houston for more than 25 years. And knowing that we have an MLS team, that we have a women's team, I love it. Like, it motivates me too. Even if I'm not, working for any outlet to watch games. Like Jesus said, we have been covering the Dynamo since we're in college. And even then, we love to go to the games just as fans, just because we knew that we love that game and we wanted to support it. And to know it's in your backyard, like, can you really call yourself a fan if you keep repeating, oh, the MLS is nothing, the MLS is the worst, the MLS is this, the MLS is that? No, the MLS is not the worst. There are different leagues out there that are not, really good because they don't have the money or because they're not trying to make the league grow or anything like that. But the MLS, for whatever reason, they have grown. It keeps growing. New teams keep popping up. So I think that it's the Houston fan base that needs to say, do I really want to support soccer? Because if you don't support soccer, it's going to leave. And then whenever there's a team that wants to play here, who are they going to play against? America, who are they going to play against if there's no Houston Dynamo here unless they do like a whole Mexican League championship here? So you have to, if you're in a different country that where you're not from, let's do that dual citizenship thing. Like, yeah, I watch Atlético Nacional whenever I can, and whenever I'm in Colombia, I try to go see them. But believe me, besides me being a beat writer for the Dynamo, I also support them because I am from Houston and I want the sport to grow more and more every time because, yeah, it's opportunities for me as a sports reporter, but also just as a fan of the game. So as a reporter, yeah, I need them to be here economically, but as a soccer fan, I also want the team to grow and opportunities to grow here for the sport of soccer itself.
Yeah, those are totally agree with what everyone has said so far. I think one of the challenges is, as Jesus was saying earlier, about football, and then God, and then everything else. One of the challenges that the Dynamo have to do is not just sell soccer, sell the brand of the Dynamo. They also have to sell soccer to people that maybe aren't familiar with, or who grew up with soccer. So that's one of the challenges, and how you sell them on that product is putting something out there that can not only compete for a championship, but also is an entertaining brand to watch as well. And I really like the Astros sort of metaphor that Laura brought up because Jim Creighton did not really want to spend a lot of money. In fact, he intentionally did through the early years so he could collect draft picks. And then he decided it's time to open up the pocketbook a little bit, and we saw the success there. So there's different kinds of challenges because, obviously, what do draft picks matter in Major League Soccer is a little debatable. But I think that with the team where we're at now, I think we're definitely in a position where if we I think Matt Jordan's done a great job finding talent on the cheap, but if he can go out and do the next level, that I think we'd get incredibly good players. And sorry if it's getting dark where I'm at.
No worries.
I do think that there's value to be found in the draft, and we've seen that. Some teams have been able to find good players through the draft. I go back to when they drafted Joseph Holland. I think he had potential, but I also think if you're not even going to play him on the field, you just wasted an international spot because he took up an international spot.
Yes.
Why draft him if you're not going to give him a chance and then you're just going to cut him loose? So I do think if the Dynamo are not going to spend money, you need to find other ways to get quality players. There's quality players in college that you can maybe pick up, and I think that goes back to what I'm saying. Maybe Matt Jordan thought Cabrera was a different coach when he hired him than what he ended up being. He kept saying, teacher of the game, teacher of the game. He coached for the, U.S. under 17 team.
Oh, yeah. Under 17.
Under 17 and also.
And Toros.
Exactly. So I think you have to find value where other teams are not finding valuable players. LAFC has a good midfielder named Mark Anthony Kaye, I think is his name. He was playing with the USL team. How did LAFC find him and the Dynamo didn't? So that's what I'm saying is I think, while I think Jordan has done a good job this offseason and midseason with some of the pickups, I think as a whole, we have to question some of the players that he's brought on and also why he can't find other players of value through other means, whether it's the draft or, USL teams or, more academy players, giving more kids chance, Matthew Doyle from MLS Soccer has this saying, play your kids, play them, The only way you're going to get these players better and to know whether they can be a professional is play them. Why are you going to play Kevin Garcia at center back or right back when you have Eric McHugh? I think Kevin Garcia, he's reached his limit as to who he is as a player. But Eric McHugh, he can still play up. He's still going to get better. He's only 18 years old.
Yes.
So if someone's going to make a mistake, I'd rather an 18-year-old make it than a 28-year-old.
So Genta is asked, why do we have to be bargain shoppers? And it's one of the things. I mean, for the most part, I don't think that the Dynamo have to. You say that they've have decent draft picks, but I think differently. to me, I think the Dynamo have been very horrible in finding draft picks that fit their system. Out of all the draft picks that we've had the last couple of years, how many of them has stuck?
I would say none, but then I think that goes back to also, is it because the coach didn't play them? In this case, Wilmer Cabrera didn't want to play them because he had his trust in other players, or or those players really just didn't cut it. But I'll go one further. How many of those players that they drafted even made it with RGV?
Well, you had Joe Holland was doing decently, and he was getting some minutes with RGV. But that's the thing, though. At the end of the day, Dynamo's the one that makes those decisions. They could have played well with RGV, been a starter with RGV consistently, but at the end of the day, if the Dynamo thinks that they're not MLS material, bye now. Like even with non-draft players, with like I mentioned before, with Captain Todd Warden, like the guy had good potential, but because Matt Jordan is so focused on that 2-3 year plan, you lose a lot of talent that maybe might take a little bit more time to make it to be MLS level, but they have the potential to do it. And I think with the draft picks, right now, so this year's draft picks, you have Brad Dunwell. Brad Dunwell has not made the starting 11 consistently with RGVFC. In front of him are Chalin, Isidro Martinez, right out of UTRGV, phenomenal player. And you have Romilio Hernandez, who came from Phoenix Rising during the middle of last season. Sam Junqua. Oh my God, I don't even want to start with Sam Junqua. Even though I'm the official, apparently I'm the official Sam Junqua fan club president, but that's neither here nor there. Sam Junqua, right now, he's been getting minutes with RGV, but I continue to think that this is because Wilmer is forcing RGV to play him, because let's be honest, Robert Coronado is a better left back than Sam Junqua. But in order for Junqua to get minutes, he has to play over Robert Coronado. And you are potentially limiting the development of Robert Coronado to favor somebody else just because he's a Dynamo draft pick. And I'm trying to remember who the third draft pick was. It's Junqua, Dunwell. Remind me here, guys, who am I missing?
It was he's with Smalls. No, Samuel.
Andrew Samuels. He has been consistent. He has been a starter for RGVFC, and he's shown to be a good player. So 1 out of 3?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it also says something. It speaks to some of the problems that just the draft in general. I mean, I don't see a lot of talent that comes through the draft, honestly. I mean, we had a number 1 draft pick in Andrew Wenger, and he retired. Mm-hmm. So I think definitely we should do our scouting reports and all that good stuff at the MLS Combine. But I think a better way to develop talent is through the academy system and through local areas, because those are things that you can control and you're more familiar with those players.
But I think, that goes back to, it's been a systematic wreck of what the Dynamo's academy situation. They just have never been able to grasp a hold of all the talent that, I mean, we're in Houston. There's so much talent here in this city alone and the surrounding cities. I'll go back and say Chris Richards played here. He played one of the local teams here. Like teams, I think around the local soccer clubs here, I don't think they see jumping to the Dynamo as an opportunity. They'd rather go to another club where they know that they may be able to play, whether that's FC Dallas, Sporting KC. Going back to a couple of games ago, Seattle Sounders, they threw out a 17-year-old out there to play against the Dynamo, and he played decently. So it's also how much of this was Cabrera not wanting to play young players, and how much of it is, Matt Jordan not finding quality players in places where people aren't looking for these type of players?
I think
We know. Go ahead.
I think it's just that the scouting network that Matt Jordan or Wilmer Cabrera had set up, they were looking at the wrong places. To me, it seemed like they were putting their scout emphasis in Central America and not necessarily in the United States, where it should be. I don't know what you guys think.
But we got good players from Central America, and the reason that I think that they do that as well is because maybe it's more economic, let's say, for the movements that they wanted to do. It's a little bit cheaper than going to like Brazil or going to Colombia or Mexico to find players. And then, I think that what Jesus just said, we're in freaking Houston. There are so many people from so many different countries that do not like basketball, that do not like baseball, that, their first passion is soccer. Soccer is the king of sports internationally. And if we have those type of players here, the parents are, feeding that love towards soccer. And they're playing like all Saturdays and Sundays. If you go to any park, it's soccer, the one that is always being played. So I can't believe that they're going to stay here and say, hey, we can't find people here locally that we want to be part of our academy. Even like there's different soccer leagues here from Mexico that have, I think, Pachuca, I want to say Tigres.
Actually,
I want to say Juventus
also. Matias Almeida has an academy here in Houston, outside right at Houston. I want to say Samba, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, why can't there be some kind of, I guess, pact or some relationship with those teams that say, hey, this player, whether it be, I don't think he's good enough to make it in Mexico, but he might be good enough to make it to the MLS, or here's this player, trade this, trade that, and just favors, or scouting them out, because that's something that happens. How many times have scouts, gone undercover to go watch an open practice, and that's where they get the players from? So, it's incredible to say that they're not finding players here in Houston locally or in Texas.
I will say this. Like I said, I'll say this offseason and this midseason, Matt Jordan has done a better job. And in talking to Matias, he told me that one of the reasons why, not just him, but we're starting to see a lot more influx of Latin American players from South America, especially more Argentines, is he told me that people are starting to look at MLS and be like, okay, it's a growing league. That's a statement. That's a quote that they always say. It's a growing league. It's a growing league. But beyond that, the infrastructure is here. It's set up. Matias told me, he's had players told me, hey, tell me about MLS. And he says the infrastructure, you just can't compete. While the game, yes, is better in the Argentinian division, the infrastructure that clubs have here is more set up to be more successful. We've all heard stories about some Liga MX clubs when they couldn't play players. I think Beasley was actually part of Puebla when Puebla wasn't able to play players. And here in MLS, we're never going to have that happen. And while, yes, we can complain all we want about the one-tier system, single-tier system, whatever you want to call it, single entity, there's a reason why MLS has run things that way. They don't want to fold. They want to grow, step by step. And they don't want to get to a point where some club can play its players. So I think the infrastructure is here for teams, for players from Latin America, South America to want to come. And I think that's over the past 5 years, we're starting to see that influx of players. And now they're starting to come at a much younger and younger age. LAFC just signed another Uruguayan player, Brian Rodriguez, right? So, and also LA Galaxy, Carlos Pavon, he was about to sign with Lyon in League One France, if I'm not mistaken, but he decided to come to LA Galaxy. So I think we're going to start to see even more of those players from South America, younger, come to MLS and see it as a jump off point to go overseas, kind of like
exactly
Almiron.
And I agree with what you're saying. I would call it like a trampoline league as well.
Yes.
Like Liga MX has been like the trampoline league for years, and I say that because a lot of Colombian players and Argentinian players have gone to Mexico, and then they've gone off to some part in Europe. So I think that the MLS is also becoming that, not only just somewhere that the older players come and die off or retire, but also where the new players are growing, just because now it's not only players from the U.S., but there's so many players from different countries that are coming in and making the league more competitive and just saying, oh, well, it's only players from the United States that, the style is different. So I think that the MLS style has done a lot of evolution because a lot of people are like, well, it's very stiff, it's very boring, but now it has a little bit more speed. There's good, beautiful plays here and there, and I think that that's going to keep growing.
Somebody made the argument on Twitter. I'm not sure who said it. They say clearly Carlos Vela is the best player in MLS, but is it time to say that he's the best player in all of CONCACAF, including Liga MX?
No. That spot is for my Bomboro Guignac.
No.
Con Guignac
I
no
mean,
se
he's
meta.
a really good player, but I think that, he shined here because he's scoring. But imagine him not scoring. So it's like, is he the best of the CONCACAF? I don't think so. Is he one of the top 10, one of the top 5? Yeah.
So something that was brought up on the chat, and that is because right now MLS as a whole sees draft picks as a waste of time, as a waste of money. You saw it in this last super draft where a lot of teams actually just sold their draft picks to Cincy for $75K in GAM or TAM or whatever. And do you think that the Dynamo should just go ahead and do that as well with those draft picks based on their lack of success with the draft picks and their actual vision of bringing in like players from outside of the out of the country, young players? Do you think that should be the more viable option for the Houston Dynamo?
I think what they should do is if they can sell that pick and get good amount of TAM or GAM or BAM, whatever you want to call it, whatever the MLS terms, yes, do it. But if you're going to pick this player, he needs to play in RGV. Send him immediately that first year that he gets drafted, send him to RGV and have him compete for playing time. And that way, in that first year, you know whether or not he's the player that you can make use of. But don't have him go back and forth from here to Dynamo, from RGV.
Exactly.
Dynamo, like just, okay, this whole first year as a professional, you're strictly an RGV player. Like, that's it. Show us what you can do. Because I think the Dynamo says they're not going to spend money on players, a lot of money, mind you. They need to find players of value somewhere else. And while, yes, I agree, the college soccer game doesn't make a good college soccer, a good soccer professional. I think the Dynamo are in the boat where they need to find these players. They need to do better scouting. They need to figure out if they can find one of these college players that they can transition to be a good professional. Maybe not an all-star, but a serviceable player.
And I've been told, from coaches, that have been at RGV, they mentioned that about the college system, and this is coming from somebody that has coached the college system. That the way the college system works right now, it's not a good way to develop these players to become professionals. When they graduate from college and go into and they manage to get to the professional level, they have to relearn everything that they've been taught for the last couple of years in college, whether it comes to a longer season, the way that they've been trained, the fact that you're now only limited to 3 substitutions, and other things like that, and the quicker pace and the better talent, going up against better talent. All of that needs to be relearned, and that takes up too much time. And to me, the college system, we have to vie away from the college system. And now that more MLS teams are building up their own academies, I think the MLS teams should focus. If they're not going to use the draft picks and they're going to get money or something, they should use some of that money to continue to develop their academies.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you guys have said. I think that just to answer the question, should you sell the pick? No, but if you do, use it to find a good player, either here or somewhere else. Should you use the pick? sure, but only if it's for a player that you think is of good enough quality for you to actually play. Otherwise, it is a waste. I think the what Jesus was saying is, just send him down, basically loan him to your club for the year. That's a lot like what the Houston Rockets do with the Vipers in the Valley. They send players
Thank you.
down for the whole time, and it's pretty effective. They've been pretty good at developing talent that way.
We've said it so many times in Down in the Valley. Thank you for mentioning it, Derrick. Ah.
I mean, yeah, it's if the Rockets are doing it and it's working out very well. Capella was down in the Valley quite a bit while Dwight Howard was in town, and then now Capella's one of the better centers in the league.
And
Yeah.
And then this season, kind of flying away from the subject. This season, you had I totally lost his name. The German kid. Isaiah Hartenstein. You had him for a long time with RGV, and because you continued to develop him, but he was consistently down there in the Rio Grande Valley playing for the Vipers. Was a key part in the G League championship this season, and the more he
MVP, right?
I think so.
I think that just to your point is something that you mentioned. I think when we were before our first break, I think that also gives RGV more consistency if we're able to send players down on loan for, say, half a season or a full season.
Correct.
At a time. It gives them more time to grow together, and that's kind of what you need to do if you want to get good.
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of bring it back to the fold. It'll be interesting how the Dynamo players respond in these next 9 games, because some of these players are also playing for a roster spot. There's no saying that maybe Matt Jordan starts after the season, starts to wheel and deal and send some of these on trade for Tam, Gam, Bam, whatever you have. I think I'm in the belief that this will be sold after this season. And if that does happen, they need to turn that money into 2 quality players as opposed to 1 great player. You need quality players, multiple quality players. This team lacks quality depth. They have depth just because they have players, but that's not depth. They need quality depth, and I think that's what they need to focus on. And once they sell these players, whether they sell just Elise and Kyoto and Manotas, which I know you said we're going to talk about those 3. I'm pretty sure Elise is out. I'm not sure about Manotas, depending how much they get. I think they could probably get more for Manotas than Elise, just because Manotas he's for it. And Elise, while you can't teach speed, apparently you can't teach him how to shoot, how to place his shots on target. So and Manotas, he's a proven goal scorer already.
I agree with you. I personally do think that Elise is going to be gone by the end of the season, or if not sooner. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like it's shocking sometimes the things that you expect them to do and they do it before, like covered it as being let go of the team. I think Elise is going to be sold for sure. I really do think so. I think that Manotas really does. I know he's very grateful and very glad he came to the MLS because he was in basically a B team in Colombia. And to be here in a great team that has helped him flourish and find his, best side of playing, best moment. But I think that he's ready to move on, and he has expressed that in some way. But I do think that he might be sold as well. I think he might end up going to Liga MX. And then back to what you said about Elise, it's we just have to see. I mean, we have to see if the next, head coach finds a way to teach him how to actually, shoot and score. Because it's like, well, there's a saying in Spanish that he's like running like a crazy train without like brakes. And I think that's his case. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever saw the Mighty Ducks when you were growing up. there was one of the kids that had so much potential and so much speed, um, but he couldn't score until the coach found a specific way to teach him. It was personalized to his skills, to his abilities, and to his falls on how to learn how to stop, think, control, and score. So I think that maybe, I mean, I see potential, and at least he's still young. I just think that maybe he hasn't found the right coach. I mean, because he does seem like a player that um, is focused, wants more for his career. Maybe he has to put in more work in, and then maybe a combination with a different coach. I mean, like Jesus said, not only time will tell to see how these players react. And now, I mean, nobody's safe now because it's not the same coach. And maybe what you were one of the favorite players for Cabrera, you might be with the next one. You don't know. So everybody has to give it their all.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
I've been asking and saying out loud that Beasley needs to show at least how to shoot. Because, I mean, Beasley had one shot against America from a tough angle, and he converted it. So, true, he's a former left winger, but still, it's
For better,
shame
for
that
better reason.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't have the same speed as Elise, and he's older. So I mean, Elise should have whatever. I mean, no, there's like no excuse in my mind of why he is not scoring those goals because he does all the hard work. He does all the hard work, and he doesn't finish. So I mean, as a player, I would be frustrated as well.
So we're gonna go into our final little break. When we come back, we'll give our final thoughts on Elise and Kyoto possible transfer rumors and final thoughts in general for this show from all three of our guests. Don't go away just yet. We will be right. All right, guys, we're back to almost wrap this show up. It was a really great discussion, guys. So we talked about it at least. So overall, you guys are all pretty much in common that Elise really did not grow under Wilmer Cabrera. Didn't really fine tune his ability to become a more complete winger slash striker, and I definitely agree with with that sentiment. But I think the biggest issue that has been plaguing not only Elise but also Kyoto have been their immaturity, their inability to control their emotions on the pitch. So my question to you guys, and I'm gonna go with Derrick first, since he's been quiet for a little bit, is: do you think that should be a factor in deciding whether they leave or stay for next season?
Well, it's a good question because I think part of what might affect their trade value is their tempers, their temperament, how they behave, on the field, and then whatever happens off of it. I think it's going to be difficult. I'd say let's wait and see how these players behave with a new coach. I think Kyoto is going to be a tougher sell. At least if he can get that shot working. If he can get that first touch to not bounce 20 feet away from him, he'd be in Europe already. But yeah, I tend to agree. Of the three, Elise is probably the one most likely to go. Manotas signed a extension, I believe, before the start of this season.
Correct.
Yeah,
so
he did.
That might he's already committed in a way himself to wanting to stay with the club. Now, whether or not we decide, we get a nice price tag for him and he wants to challenge himself somewhere else, that may happen. But I think at least right now, I'd say he's probably safe. Kyoto, I think he's going to be the toughest one to sell to somebody because how often we see him, like kick a ball into the stands and get a yellow card, or reacts to, maybe there should have been a foul, maybe there shouldn't have, but he definitely will let you know.
Off the pitch problems as well.
Should have been. Yeah, I mean, and I believe he's been the one that's starting a lot of these Kyoto to Europe rumors. I mean, he's the one saying it on these shows and things like that. So I don't know how much interest is genuine. He probably wants to go. I think we would if we could, but not before maybe getting somebody else. And we know that Memo, he can step up and play well. We've seen our new guy, Christian Ramirez, looking great so far, but definitely a team that wants to improve so that they are better and can make the playoffs, because missing it for another year, I think, would just be out of question, right?
I think it's 4 out of the past 5 years that they've missed the playoffs, not counting 2017 for his first year. Going back to Elise, in the game against Philadelphia, Nico, one of the new signees or new acquisitions, when he came in, he got to the end line, sent in across. Elise was right there. Elise whiffed on the shot. He didn't even get a shot out. So as I'm saying, I think Elise and Kyoto, and I know this is something that has been said on the chat, and actually shout out to the chat. They've been on it all show long. Is Elise and Kyoto, they were at the top in 2017, their first year. And you could probably sold them for more money after that first year. Now, I'm not sure how much money you could get. You could probably still get good money for Elise because you can't teach speed. Speed is speed. You know, and hopefully you're thinking that if you're a team, you're like, I can teach him how to finish. I can teach him how to work on his first touch. But Kyoto, I don't know what you do with Kyoto. The Dynamo may just have to swallow it and be like, okay, let's hope he has a new mindset next season. Because I'll be honest, people have called him a diva on social media throughout the games. And while there's some truth to that, I think that when Kyoto is on and his head is on straight, he's a difference maker for this team. 2017 Kyoto was really good when he started playing with the Dynamo before he picked up that injury. He was that same Kyoto last season, part of the year. But I don't know why he can't just be consistent. And I'll go back and say, if Kyoto was consistent, he wouldn't be in MLS. He'd be with Liga MX right now.
He's a difference maker, too. I mean, I remember when we first picked him up, I could see just the way he has just an instinct of knowing where the ball is going to be. And he's not as fast as Elise, but he's got some wheels. And just seeing his ability to also create for others, throwing, driving down to the end line and then playing it across goal for Manotas to tap in. That's valuable, and we've seen that. But it is all of this off the field stuff and stuff on the field where he's so passionate to a fault. It's painful because there's so much there. If he was just more committed and, maybe take a little bit of his heart out of the game almost, and he can, I don't know, make, better decisions instead of just reacting with what's in there. So it's difficult, and I think it definitely has affected his value.
Yeah, and to add on, I definitely agree with, I'm thinking that Elise is going to be gone. I do think even though Manotas signed, he just recently signed, and he's been like basically the poster boy for the Houston Dynamo, I think that he will probably leave by the end of this season, if not mid-season next year. Because yeah, he's happy that he's here, like I said, but we've had conversations, and I feel like he wants to grow even more, and he feels like he cannot do that here in the MLS.
Correct.
And one of his dreams is to be part of the national team for Colombia. And the Colombian coaches do not tend to look at MLS teams. They
Yes.
will choose players from Liga MX. They will choose players from Spain. They will choose players from Portugal, from Italy, but not from the MLS. They get overlooked. So I think that one of his life goals is to be part of the Colombian national team. And if he has to leave the MLS to make that happen, he will do it. So that's why I'm so adamant in saying that I believe he's going to be leaving here soon rather than later. And I also agree with the Kyoto thing. I think that he will be a harder sale. And like what Jesus said, he is on his game. He has talent. He definitely has talent, but he has to be, in the game 1,000% and not be distracted by, other players, because the MLS players, they study their rivals. And if they know that Kyoto has a short fuse, they might go after it because he'll be the one that gets the red card and has the Dynamo with less men on the pitch. So I feel like, yeah, he might be a liability to the team, but is he more of a liability to the team, or will he help the team more? So you have to kind of, not condemn him for the last games he's had, but have an overlook of what he's done for the team in the past. And like what Jesus said, he is a player that goes in there and changes the game around, but he has to be in it 100%. And now let me say this. There's other players in other leagues, like Rey Arturo, the Chilean, that he has a short fuse. He has had accidents before he played a big match. He has done things out and inside the pitch that aren't the best things ever, but he gets things done. So people tend to overlook it, whether that's good or bad. I don't agree. But I mean, if Kyoto gets his game on and does what he needs to do, whether he has a short fuse or not, then people will tend to overlook it as long as he's helping out the team. So I think that, like I said, I think that Kyoto probably stay. I think that Elise Manotas will leave.
I just want to point out from the chat, Mark Segovia, thank you for this. He says Elise should be getting 15 plus assists easy every year if he didn't worry so much about scoring from angles that don't make sense. And I definitely agree with that. Let's see what
100%.
else we got. Morrow, regarding Maury, Cisco says Maury will just have to score 30 goals then in order to get some attention from the national team manager. And my friend Josh, he says Colombia isn't looking at MLS teams because MLS is still in super draft days. And Hente says talent without discipline is talent wasted. And I definitely agree with that take. So thank you guys for y'all's inputs in the chat. We might not mention it a lot today, but we are noticing what you guys are putting in, and your takes are really, really, really good. So it's almost going to be 9 o'clock. We're a minute away from 9 o'clock, and 2 hours is a lot. So I know there's a lot of topics that we wish we could have covered today, but we're kind of running out of time. So I guess for today, we're going to do two things. Number one is a Generation Orange / Down in the Valley tradition, and that is predictions / bold predictions, and your final thoughts for today's show. So I'm going to go with ladies first. I'm going to go with Laura. Laura,
thank you.
your prediction for this Saturday's match against Colorado.
I think that the Dynamo will. I don't want to be the pessimist of the team, but I can see a 2-1 losing. I think that the team will still be kind of shook up. Maybe it's an interim coach. He has never been a head coach before. I think that it's going to be a big turmoil. And it usually takes a team some games to kind of get used to the new direction and the new vision of the coach. So I think they're going to lose 2-1. I mean, they might shut me up and win 2-1, but I think that probably will be the score, 2-1 losing. And hopefully they prove me wrong.
All right. Jesus, your prediction?
I'm gonna say 2-0 Dynamo. I think I have a feeling they're gonna come out with a sense of urgency. I think the players. I think they know it themselves that they're partly to blame. I think, well, at least the ones that give it their all on the pitch, they know that they haven't lived up to the talent that they have on the team. They've said it so many times to me and to other press after the game at practices that they have talent on the pitch. They have talent on that team. They just haven't been able to translate that talent on paper onto the pitch. And I think, having a change in coach, I think it's gonna light a fire in their behind, to say. So I think those settle Dynamo, and they're also playing Colorado, so I think that also has a lot to do with it. So yeah, I'll say 2-0 Dynamo.
All right, Derrick.
All right, I'm going with the Dynamo Unchained theme for this game. I think a lot of the guys that may have been unhappy are now going to be themselves, and I think that Davies' maybe lack of head coaching experience may benefit this team, because I think he might tell them to just go out and play, and when these guys are playing the way that they want to on their own, they're really difficult to beat, because they are just out there having fun, scoring goals and setting up teammates and all that. So I'm going to go with, and because it's Colorado, and we're at home, we're looking to snap this 4-game losing streak. I'm going to go with a big 4-1 win. I think that's entirely.
If that's his regular prediction, I don't want to imagine what his bold prediction is going to be.
It's my bold regular prediction. I feel like they are they're just going to go out there and try and have fun, and when they're having fun, they're scoring. So,
all right,
and they're letting some in.
Yeah, but I mean, last to add, I don't think that we thought that we've had a team beat the Dynamo before they're actually playing. So I wouldn't let Colorado fool you, because I mean that's what they thought with the last home game loss, and look what happened. So.
Yeah, no, it's possible. That's why it's kind of bold, but yeah,
really bold.
We'll all see, when we're all in the press box, so we'll be able to, I got $1 on my score.
Yeah, and I think that, what though, I think it's possible now that I remembered again that we have Ramirez, and so it might be possible, because now we have a new player and it's his first home game, so yeah.
All right,
yep.
My regular prediction is going to be 3-0 Houston Dynamo. My bold prediction for this one is 4-3 Dynamo, 90th minute goal, and it's Kevin Garcia that's going to score it. That's my bold prediction.
Oh, my, please.
Super
please.
Kevin.
Now you're dreaming.
That's why it's called a bold prediction.
Well, my bold prediction is 5-1 then. I'm changing it now from 2-1. My bold one is 5-1.
Jesus?
Dynamo winning.
My bold prediction is, I'll say 4-0 Dynamo. They come out playing just free fun. I think the changing coach, I think also, now I'll go back to what I said with my regular prediction to 0. I think them knowing that they're also, they're going to play more free, but also knowing that, hey, we're partly to blame. We need to go out here and show that we are still a good team. So I just say 4-0 Dynamo, maybe Manota's back to hat trick. That'll be my bold prediction.
Derrick?
All right. For my bold prediction, I'm sticking with, let's say 4-0. But I'm going to say none of the goals come from forwards. All center backs or outside backs or midfielders. No forwards get on the score sheet for that.
Oh, that is a really bold prediction. Callow says, I would like to point out in caps lock that I was the only one to get the bold prediction right last week. He said that Tommy Mack was not going to play, which was a bold prediction coming from Wilmer Cabrera.
Yeah.
All right. So we gave our predictions. Now, just guys, just your final thoughts before we sign out for the night. Laura.
I feel like what Jesus said, and with you know, my mind's going blank now. Just talk Dynamo the whole day. Um, I think that maybe the players will have something to prove, and some of them will feel relieved, some of them will be affected, some of them will be affected positively or negatively. So I just feel like the Dynamo needed this. I think it's a semi-fresh start. I don't think it's a fresh start because there's a lot of things that still need to be fixed for the Dynamo team to be a real, true contender to be in the playoffs and actually win it. And things need to be made, and at the end of the day, most of the times the coaches are the ones that suffer the consequences and get blamed. So now we'll see in the rest of the games to see if Carrera was to blame or part of the problem, or it's a deeper issue with players in the team. So, as a reporter, I do want to see them win because it just gives better articles. And I just hope to see a better game on Saturday.
Jesus?
Yeah, final thoughts. I'll say I still feel Cabrera was seen as a scapegoat in this whole situation. I go back to say I think it was 50-50 his fault, 50-50 the players' fault not playing up to the level that they need to play, that they showed that they could play. And, when they went to the Western Conference Finals in 2017 and when they won U.S. Open Cup in 2018, I think some players gave up already. And I think that didn't look good on them part, but also, obviously you always chop off the head first, and then in this case it was Wilmer Cabrera. I do wish they would have waited till the end of the season just to, cut the losses at the end of the season, but I think they did this move just to kind of, I don't want to say please the fans, but to kind of show the fans, hey, we're doing something about what is going on with the team, just, so I'll say that's what happened, and we'll see. David Arnault has 9 games to prove if he has it to be an MLS head coach.
Derrick?
Yeah, we're definitely at a point where we're kind of standing still, but now we have gotten a significant change. So I think we all agree that this team is immensely talented when they're playing at their level, and even when they're exceeding the level that they're capable of playing at. But I really hope that this kind of move, because whether we wanted the coach to be out or if we wanted that to happen kind of at the end of the season, we are rooting for the Dynamo still, and I hope that this kind of change does affect the team positively. I'm usually seen as kind of the optimist in general when talking Dynamo, and I don't think the playoffs they're not off the table, but they're almost off the table because it requires a huge Herculean effort to get back up there. But they're still kind of close, but their schedule's brutal, so.
Yeah.
It's not looking good, but I just hope that we get some wins and make it, a more comfortable, didn't make the playoffs, like we just missed out type of thing, rather than like, oh yeah, we finished last and things are bad and all that kind of negative things, because then what are we going to do this offseason? That's going to be ask a lot more questions about what direction does this organization go. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this team transition from now until the off season, and then depending where we are, we'll see what needs to be done.
So just wanted to point out that Josh says that Matt Jordan went on record on Glenn Davis's show saying there will be a good search for a new head coach, but it's one of those things where, like you guys mentioned it, Matt Jordan's not going to say, oh, we're just going to be looking at whatever. He's obviously going to say, yeah, we're going to be looking for the best person available for the job. But at the end of the day, is that person that they get going to be good enough once it's put into practice? That's the bigger question. Frankly,
right.
I'm very reluctant, but I hope that I am wrong.
Yeah, and it's like what we were saying kind of about just the move in general to fire the coach. He's not going to go out there and say that, yeah, the season's over. We're throwing in the towel, guys. Sorry. No,
Yeah.
he's going to say the right thing, that we're still fighting for a playoff position. And, yeah.
So one more thing, guys. Where can our audience find you at? Where are y'all's social media accounts, Laura?
I am in all my social media accounts. I'm under Laura Gomez News.
Okay, and tell us where they can find your works as well.
I am a freelance writer for the MLS, so just MLS Houston Dynamo, and also a beat writer for Pro Soccer USA, and also for the Dash game. So you can check that out as well. And I'm very active, like breaking news and things like that on Twitter and Instagram, and somewhat on Facebook.
Derrick?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Stowers410. You can find my work on Dynamo Theory. I write under the name Gribbs because I started off as just a reader, and then I became a writer, and now I'm an editor. So I do all sorts of stuff. And I love, if you guys tweet at me, I love talking. We're trying to get active in the comment section on our articles, and I will reply to things like that. I love talking soccer and Dynamo. Like I said, I'm usually seen as the optimist, so if you like being a real downer, I can be a nice foil against that. But yeah.
Jesus?
You can find my stuff at thebayoucitian.com. You can just go to my Twitter at thebayoucitian. That's where you'll see all my stuff. And you go to that bio, you can find my personal Twitter. I used to tweet a lot more, Dynamo stuff on my personal Twitter, but when I opened up the Bayou Citian, I try to keep most of it on there. So just the Bayou Citian, and the BayouCitian.com is where you'll find all my work. Over these past couple of weeks, I've done features on a lot of players, some of the new players, so the fans can get to know them. And I do want to say one thing. I bet you tomorrow when we go to Dynamo training, it's going to be packed with media, and I'm going to give them a little ribbon saying, oh, now you guys make it to the Dynamo practice.
Right? Where are you all? No, I definitely agree with y'all. So guys, thank you so much. Everybody who watched us tonight, we really appreciate y'all's trust and support for Generation Orange. On behalf of myself and Sean Ringrose, who couldn't be here today, we really would like to thank y'all. You can go ahead and follow us at Gen Orange Radio on Twitter and on Facebook. You can follow me personally. Actually, I wouldn't recommend it. But you can follow me if you guys want to. My personal Twitter account is at @Ochoa_8, as well as on Instagram as well. Be sure to follow me there. You can check out Generation Orange, the co-host. I'm also co-host for Down in the Valley, which we talk alongside with Jacob Young, Ray Silva, as well as Cesar Cortez, all Valley people, about RGVFC. So if you guys are very interested in what's going on with RGVFC, be sure to give us a try. We go live tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the same channel at 7 p.m. as well. It is San Antonio Hate Week. It is South Texas Derby Week. So tomorrow we're going to have Harry Austin, who is a San Antonio fan and the host of the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. I probably butchered that, but sorry, Harry. So be sure to tune in tomorrow. It's going to be a good discussion between San Antonio fans and RGV fans. So you can check me out there. You can also check out my works about the Dynamo on my personal webpage, lacarganaranja.com, and and that's in English, and Mente Futbolera in Spanish. So thank you guys. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jesus. And thank you, Derrick, for taking y'all's time to coming in and participating in this discussion. Hopefully we can have you all in the future back on once again to talk about maybe some improvements under the new coach or other topics, or things that have not been improved even with this new coach, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. I know one of the things I wanted to talk about was about supporters groups, but hopefully with the new changes that John Walker and Deanna Witter are trying to implement, hopefully we can see some improvement in that. And if not, or if there is, next time we'll have another roundtable and we can continue to discuss it. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you.
Of course. And
Yeah, thank you for hosting this roundtable. And with that, I sign off.
All right. Later,
Thanks so much.
Jesus.
Alrighty, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Thank
you, guys.
you. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.
And to you all in the Facebook chat, YouTube chat, thank you all so much. We'll see each other tomorrow for Down in the Valley at 7 p.m. And next week for hopefully, I probably won't be on Tuesday. So it'll probably be on Thursday because I'm going to be going to the Tigres game. Lau. But we be sure to follow us on our social media, and we will let you all know for sure when the next Generation Orange episode is going to be. Hopefully we could see you all in next week as well. Thank you all so much for everything. Have a good night. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.